May I request Sahar Gul, Dr. Sahar Gul, to join us for her talk, and later on interview or to speak, have a dialogue with Shabnam Virmani. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Sahar Gul.
कॾहिं दर कुशादा दिलबर संदा, कॾहिं दर कुशादा दिलबर संदा, कॾहिं पूरियो ॾीन, कॾहिं वञा वञी न सघां, कॾहिं पाण सॾीन, कॾहिं कुछनि की न की, कॾहिं बाज वंझां ॿोलीन, कॾहिं कौल करीन, कॾहिं हर्फ़ न कुछनि हिकिड़ो, कॾहिं ताकियूं ॾीन, कॾहिं खुलनि दर दोस्त जा, कॾहिं अचां अचण न लहां, कॾहिं कोठियो नीन, कॾहिं सिकां सॾ खे, कॾहिं गुझांदर गरहीन, अहिड़ा ई आहिनि साहिब मुंहिंजा सुपिणे. Thank you very much, Endowment Fund Trust, and especially Hamida Hun Sahab for kindly inviting me to speak on Shah Latif Bhitai, and also let her carry all of you through the journey Ms. Shabnam Virmani and Mr. Vipul Rikhi had. Through the desert of Kutch in Gujarat, where they met faqirs of Shah, along with Kabir Panthis in their side of the border, and ultimately they got intrigued to translate Shah Latif Bhitai into English language. Today in my speech, I would talk how Bhitai's protagonists, his heroes and his heroines, walk from the preliminary stages to the supreme level of consciousness in their pursuit of ishq, and express exemplary levels of their understanding of love. And they take that understanding to the philosophical elevations. This is what I say, that Bhitai should be read like this. In his each surah, there is a beginning and there is a kind of journey, and after that there's a summit that his characters reach. Generally, there is a tendency in human beings to yearn for seeing ideas into material form. If you tell them an anecdote, or if you tell them a folklore from past with no proper dates, with no proper geographical links, they would go search and find those. And if they do not find time and a space, or dates and locations of that anecdote, then they would create those, but tracing those with solid evidence as well. Similarly, we Sindhis are very idealists. We also believe in seeing the uncommon and rare Bhitaian symbolism in the tangible form. Our fantasy is to see that idealism translated from word to spirit and action. For example, the well Marvi fetched water from, we would go and find that in Bhalwa. Or we would like to spot the exact location of the bank where Suni entered the waters and swam through towards her mehar. Or say, for example, we heard Mr. Kalmati and Mr. Rahman, they treaded the path. Sassi went on in search of Pundu. They had tedious and toilsome walk on the similar terrain, both physical terrain and emotional or ideal terrain that clearly is hinted in Bhitai as we recite the baits as Mr. Rahman and Mr. Kalmati did. What I want to say that we humans can think only spatio-temporally, except some exceptional people who challenge this idea. But that is why I say that we humans cannot think without space and time. When we know the story, we should know the space and time, when it happened and which place it happened. If we don't know that story, we create. That's why, because categorically in our brain we are spatio-temporal beings. So we create a space and time, and we create those anecdotes, the space and time of those anecdotes which history doesn't tell us. So there must be truth in tangible accounts of folklore, that Bhitai and his preceding poets like Qazi Kazan, Lutfullah Shah Qadri, Mio Shah Inayat, sang in their poetry, nor can I say with authenticity or challenge it either those were the real characters or those were not the real characters, or those are or not symbolic fiction of a poet's mind. Whatever it is so beautiful. The symbolism fascinates me so much, also because this is the ingredient in his poetry that draws a clear sketch of Bhitaian attribute or Bhitaian personality trait, especially the one I would highlight in my today's talk, that how they ascend from preliminary stages of consciousness, and I passionately think what potentials are there to become Bhitaian and to perform the same feats of bravery. Is it possible or not? Such as loving passionately like Sasui can one do in this 21st century? Loving passionately like Sasui, or attributes of bravery in Ramkali and Khahodi, Samundri, even Ghatu. Unremitting pursuit of love in Sohni, strange simplicity of Noori, unbelievable surrender of Jam Tamachi and Raidyach as well, are the Jogis and Khahodis wading through the woods and rocks and their quest and pursuit in the unknown locations where they did their ascetic practices. So in fact, those seem the tasks to be performed by the mythical characters. This is what I think as a Herculean or Promethean tasks which we see in Greek philosophy. Only half humans and half gods could do. So at present today, three moods of Bhitai's protagonists: the beginning, the journey, and the summit. The baits I would take from Sur Kalyan, Sur Sasui, and Sur Suni, and I wanted to talk on Kapati as well, but I would cut short my speech. They carry very intense and concentrated meaning. Through those baits, I would elaborate what Bhitai expects from his protagonists, and which couldn't be expected otherwise from humans. To begin with, the bait I read about the journey within a material and immaterial void. He says, "Je tatto tan tanur jiya ta chande saan chamaye." Now, this bait mentions a body, not soul. It mentions of a soul in the next lines, but what it says, "Je tatto tan tanur jiya ta chande saan chamaye, आणे आग अदबजी बारे जान जलाए, बुरका अंदर बाजियों पंजू सब पचाए, लुछण लौ लतीफ चए, पदर हड मपाए, मतां लोक लखाए, विसाला विच पे." Now think what he says. If like a furnace your body burns, cool it off by sprinkling water. Jitato tanura jiya ta chande saan chama. Chando in Sindhi is just one time sprinkle, and it carries too less quantity of water, and it carries less than a second or just 1 second of the time spent, and you sprinkle a chando, not more than that. Bhitai doesn't say to pour water and cool it off. Bhitai doesn't say to pour water, cool it off. It says chando. Chando, when you put chando, the thing is still burning. So jitato tanura jiya ta chande saan chamaye, aane aga adabaji bare jaan jalaye. Now, with utmost reverence, Jaan in Farsi language is ruh. So above in the first line he has used word tan, then of course I have translated as Jaan. Aane aga adabasi bare jaan jalai. And what kind of reverence it is, that the more you enter into the reverence and veneration, you burn your soul. To burn your soul with the heat of that passion. And then he says, burka andar baziyon panju sab pachaye. Whatever the exercises, whatever the feats of bravery, whatever the practices that you are doing, practice those clandestinely. Practice those covertly, surreptitiously. Nobody should know those. You do that, you are passing through all that burning, but be quiet and be silent. This is Bhitai's character. And then he says, luchan lau latif chay, padara hadu mapaye, mata lok lakhaye, visala vichapaye. So the restiveness of the soul in love, Latif says, must not be revealed to anyone. So hide your love. When you are in love, hide it. Remember, is spread among people may impede your meeting the beloved. So, matan loka lakhaye visala vichpave. So, is Sadi Shirazi says, bisyar safar bayad ta pukhte shavad khami. You need a lot of journey until the raw becomes ripe. Bisyar safar bayad ta pukhte shavad jami suf. Bisyar safar bayad ta pukhte shavad khami sufi na shavad safi na dar ki shad jami. So a lot of journey is required till raw becomes ripe, and the Sufi cannot be pure until he reaches mosque. The second mood. The second mood is from Sasui. Again, I will mention the same way that there is a beginning, there is a journey, and there's summit. Sasui initially is in the journey, and then she's talking about how hard is the journey, and she says, Utta veri, othar veri thedam der. Chothu veri vav thyo jeh latya punuha per. Panju veri sij thyo jeh ulhi ki aver. Chahu veri chapar thyo jeh savan kaya ser. Sattu veri chandra thyo jo khidyo na vadi aver. Vahire ji verath chulu karyan chapare. So now the camel drivers and the husband's brothers all were nemesis. In addition to them, she talks to the natural elements. She doesn't talk to only humans or talk about humans. She talks to natural elements, which she also terms as adversaries. And she says the wind, which eroded the track Punhu went on, the wind, which eroded the track Punhu went on, it eliminated or it obliterated the footprints. Then there was the sun, which set earlier than the normal time and delayed journey, causing the darkness of the twilight. The mountains led tractable and smooth passes, and the last of all was the moon, which appeared late on the vistas of the horizon. So, and she says before the twilight, when the birds too return to their own bubbles and nests, and she alone, when even birds have gone to their abodes, she's alone, hopping amidst the hills. And then she portrays further. Now this further stages. Now she first tells that how hard is the journey. Second, she tells how dangerous is the journey. And I would recite a few bites from Sasui. Vada van karaja jit nang sujan nila. Utte Abdul Latif chay kaya hekliya hila jit kudban kabila ut rasj rahbar rahame. Wakaf na vankar ji pani khayam na pav. Jabal tho jaldayun kare tikh dekhare tav. Lage look Latif chay mazurin mathav. Utte odo aav jit hot hekliya hai. So now there are half-tea trees in Vankar. I'm also like as Kalmati and Rahman Saab said that Vankar is a place. I'm using the Vankar the same way as a place. That there are half-tea trees in Vankar, while there are poisonous blue snakes in the territory she has to walk through. In such harsh circumstances, she's a solitary traveler, struggles to continue her journey. She says she knows no whereabouts of Punhu. She did not carry along a quarter seer of water in the journey. The mountain was overly unsympathetic. Winds blew hot, and the sunbeams were scorching. And then she says, "Oh, beloved, reach me in the tract where I am alone, without any kith and kin, and the tri-span of view, in the terribly adverse circumstances." Now there's a shift, suddenly. She's in the journey in search of Punhu, and suddenly Bhitai, takes her to the zenith. I don't know at what stage. He asks her, "Vani cho vankar hitna goli hotake." Why are you going into the journey? Why don't you find the Punhu around, the beloved around? Vani cho vankar hitna goli hotake, liko kine Latif che baro cho be par, thiu sakti bad sandro prit Punhu asi par, nae nen nihar tome dero dost jo. So look within. The beloved is inside. Bhitai asks her why she goes far to Vankar to find the beloved. Why does not she search for Punhu here? And here means around her. The beloved is not concealed anywhere. And asks her to be devoted. Being a devoted woman ashik or being a devoted ashik fulfill the claim of her love for Punhu. Close eyes, Bhitai asks her. I mean, in the entire Risalo, it is like this. Either Sasui or Bhitai's characters are speaking, or Bhitai himself is speaking. In the beginning of the journey, the characters are speaking. Suni is speaking when she's going to Mehar. Sasui is speaking. But at one stage, Bhitai himself speaks. So he is suggesting Sasui. Vanji cho vankar hitna goli hotake. And he says, close your eyes, look inside within yourself, and see the beloved that dwells there inside you. So these are the stages. I would last stage would be of, I would mention of Suhni. The similar way, Suhni is in love, and she has a very complicated love, and she has to bear with this dilemma and stay into the dilemmatic situation for a long time. Initially, she says, "Vahada vahan nawa anya vah age thyo." Vahada vahan nawa anya vah age thyo. Ghar vethyun ghana karyo sartyu sang sama surat ja sahada ji saje rithiyan hundana palyo ma ghiro sab ghada khadi. So she says, in the beginning, she's kind of, quite excited, ecstatic, and she's being, taunted and teased by her friends, and she's telling her women friends that these are the new creeks or new flows of water, and the dangerous one is even far ahead. The violent current is still ahead, and she addresses to her women friends that while staying at home without taking any trouble, they just made tall claims of love. Then she says, had they only seen the beloved as she saw him, they all would avoid to deter her from entering the waters. Rather, all of them would have picked the jars and hopped into the river. Now, this is one stage. Second stage is, she says, she's defining what is the real lover and the passionate, ardent lover, real lover, and then infatuated one. She says, "Kandhiya ubhiyu ketriyu sahar sahar kan." Kandhiya ubhiyu ketriyu sahar sahar kan. Kinin sango sahajo ke ghores kayo ghidan sahar sandu tin ghagaye ghidanje. So she says, many women standing on the bank of river exclaim beloved. They call or they address their beloved. They yearn for their beloved. Some of them show reluctance to enter the water to avoid jeopardizing their life. Others dive deep into waters and say, sacrifice your life. The beloved is of those who enter water merrily and fearlessly. Now the third stage. Now she's into dilemma. She's with Mehar, and she's a bit dilemmatic. She says, "Gora bai par hiu herat mein pyo." I told about dilemma that she's with Punnu and then Dam at home is waiting for her. And she's in this too risky state of mind. Both are heavy. Gora bai par hiu herat mein pyo. She's utterly surprised. Veha ta veram the niya me poe nihar. Vanya ta vako the pade poe pachar. Hute vaide var it sutudinam sartiu. Now she's puzzled, as both sides of the picture of her life are overbearing for her. And she says, while she's in rendezvous with Mehar, it causes delay in reaching her home because somebody is waiting at her home. If she ventures out to leave her home to meet Mehar, she becomes talk of the town. So she is in a situation, if she meets Mehar, she keeps her promise with him, but when she gets back to home, there's a trouble. So this is the kind of a stage that she is in love with Mehar, and she's bold, and she's, inviting her friends to see Mehar and his beauty and his charisma and try to enter the waters. And suddenly she, at the final stage, says this, which is the last bait I'm going to recite. She says, "Vanya kinavari hunda rechai rahi raha." Vanya kinavari hunda rechai rahi raha. She says she would not like to return from Mehar. She would always like to be with him. Vanya kinavari hunda rechai rahi raha. Duhi pase dostaji magai pama mari. Surat nasuhaka kayas chitachari. Visala frakaji suje galgari. Telhai tari muhginyo motyo vanya. So she says she would not like to return from Mehar or go away from him. She would even wish to stay with him. Even he does not ask, even he does not invite and ask her to stay, still she would like to stay. She would rather like to die at the home and hearth of Mehar, where Mehar lives. Soni says her love is not the pursuit of Mehar's beauty. Now, what is surprising thing, initially she says, "Ke Surat ja Sahar ji je dithava," she says, if you see his beauty, you will also jump into the water. But here she says, his beauty is not the matter. It's a matter of heart. So this is the higher stage. Surat and Sohaka Kayas Chitachari. So he says that it's not the pursuit of Mehar's beauty, it's a love that drives her heart crazy. Separation is certainly more valued than union. And she says on that account that without any regrets, on compunction, she swims back to her place. She went to Mehar, reached the bank, and then suddenly she comes up with this idea that Visala Frakaji Suje Galgari Telahi Tari Muhingino Motovana. The vessel is attractive, but not as attractive as Firakh is attractive. So this is kind of zenith. In this first stage, she tells beauty of Sahar that made her enter waters. In the second stage, that the beauty makes Suni enter the waters to swim through him. So I want to say that when we go through Bhitai, we have to find it, because Bhitai, the original, it is said that was Ganj, but Ganj was also compiled by several people. So what was exactly order of the verses that Bhitai gave, I am trying to give order in my way because it's my perspective, my point of view. Many people will not agree. But I think that Bhitai too makes his characters start journey, go further, and take them to the philosophical stages, which are not physical, which are symbolic. So there are stages I firmly believe Bhitai should be read like that. As I say, the rudimentary stage, secondary stage, and rise to the zenith. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The answer to your question, if I may only quote Rumi, is I recited a verse. The lover laughed. He said, "Are you trying to hold me in your cute little rhyme?" I said, "You don't have to break it into pieces." He said, "It was too small. I couldn't fit in it." That's why it broke to pieces. So that's why it does not sound the way it does normally. I first picked up, welcome Shabnam, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
At the same time, I would also like to welcome Ahmed Shah of the Arts Council, who has been very, very kind to me in allowing us to arrange this program this evening. I thought he would speak a few words, but he was late and we started the event. When I picked up her book at this Liberty shop, I came home, I read a piece, and I went back and I picked up all the books that were there so that we could distribute it to some of our friends. Unfortunately, in the meantime, things happened so that books were not allowed to come into Pakistan. And then I spoke to her and I requested her, if I have her permission, I would like to have this reprinted here. We have finally been able to do that. I will just read a piece from a book, a very brief one, which moved me. It says, it is said that once all the flies of the world got together and went to the king of moths. Moths are held in greater esteem than flies, and so the flies developed a desire to upward mobility. They buzzed about and presented their requisition to the king of moths that they should be given the status of moths and admitted to their club. After all, they cried, "We too have wings and fly around like moths do." The king of moths replied, "Sure. The job of a moth is to search for the light. Go and seek the light, and if you find it, I will declare you all moths." The flies buzzed off immediately, keen to bring back news of the flight of the light before the moths. They flitted across towns and villages and streets, finding a bonfire somewhere and a smoldering pyre elsewhere, or a row of lamps and candles in another place. They sped back to the king in double quick time and recounted their discoveries to him. Now you must deliver your verdict, the flies demanded of the king. What verdict, said the king. Let your moths come back. Then we will know whether we won or they did, whether we found more light or they did, the flies cried out. Oh, that verdict has already been delivered. My friends, exclaimed the king. How so? Asked the flies, bewildered. You fools, those who have found light, what need would they have to come back? And then she translates Latif. She says, if you want to be called a moth, come, extinguish the fire. This fire has roasted many. You must roast the fire. Seek the truth, extinguish the flame, but never spell out your inner secrets to others. Thank you, Shabnam. And one of the questions my friend wanted me to ask you, I will leave it to Dr. Sahar. Why did you translate Latif?
Yes. Hi, Shabnam. How are you? Hello, hello, Saharji. So nice to be with all of you, albeit digitally.
Yeah. Once again, yeah. Please say.
Yes. No, I just wanted to say thank you so much. मैं बहुत शुक्रगुजार हूँ कि अब्दुल हमीद अखून साहब ने इस किताब को लायक समझा पाकिस्तान में सिंध की भूमि में जहाँ शाह लतीफ़ के इतने मुरीद और आशिक हैं, सिंधी जानने बोलने वाले लोग हैं, उनके बीच इस किताब को फिर से पब्लिश करना I think it's a great honor for myself and Vipul Rikhi. This is a joint work. Unfortunately, Vipul has not been able to join us today, but I'm very indebted to Endowment Trust Fund for doing this and for, in a sense, breaching this border that keeps us apart. So should I just proceed and answer the question Akhund Sahab has put to me?
No, Shabnam, I have a question, and that is also loaded with the question Mr. Akhund asked. So shall I start?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I would like to know your story, your and Vipul's story, and that why you thought to translate Bhitai, basically. As I know, you were a researcher who made 4 documentary films on Kabir, and your film Kabira Khada Bazaar mein won the special jury prize at the 52nd National Awards in 2011. My question will be that amidst such accomplishments, what intrigued you to aid Bhitai in your research and translate it as well?
Ji. I think even the journeys in Quest of Kabir were not seeking a unique, singular voice. The journeys that I made questing for Kabir in India and to some extent in Pakistan, in fact, ये जो मक्खी और परवाने का किस्सा अखून साहब ने अभी बताया, ये मैंने फरीदुद्दीन अयाज साहब से सुना था कराची में. मैं कराची में उनके साथ रिकॉर्ड कर रही थी for my film Had Anhad. And that film ends with that kissa that we put into the book. So that nugget of wisdom came from Farid Sahab. I think basically what I will say is that all our work at the Kabir project, whether it is films or the archive we've built called Ajab Sheher, which is a large collection of it's a digital archive that puts out all our recordings in Sufi, Bhakti and Baul poetry and music in India and to some extent in the little forays we made into Pakistan as well. तो हमारा सारा काम एक तरह से तफावतों दिखाने वालों से मुंह मोड़कर हमारी जो एक शेयर्ड हिस्ट्री है, शेयर्ड कल्चर है, शेयर्ड हेरिटेज है, कॉमन लेगेसी है, उसको एक तरह से सेलिब्रेट करना. क्योंकि तफावतें दिखाने वाले लोग बहुत हैं समाज में, दुनिया में, चाहे वो हमारे रिलीजियस लीडर्स हों, people who point out differences, people who are beholden to the project of seeking originality, purity, uniqueness, exclusivity. These are all deeply problematic projects. However, they may carry some weight and worth. But really, it is the Sufis and the Bhaktas who taught us, who had the courage to keep bringing us back to a recognition of our porosity, the porosity of our borders. We are not silos, we are not individuals. We are jewels in an Indra's net. We are, you are, therefore I am. We are not unique wonders that tupcoat from the Akash. We are embedded in a web of codependent arising. तो ये जो इंटरबीइंग वाला भाव है, ये सूफियों ने हमें इसकी राह बताई, कबीर ने बताई. तो शाह लतीफ़ भिटाई को इन्हीं सफ़रों के दौरान कबीर को पाते पाते हमने और कितने ऐसे लोगों को पाया, चाहे वो गोरखनाथ हों या ईश्वर दास, गुलाबी नाथ, मीराबाई, शाह हुसैन, बुल्ले शाह. और ये अगर आप एकेडमी में आएँ तो शायद इनको बहुत अलग अलग पढ़ा जाता होगा, सिखाया जाता होगा, लेकिन जब आप ज़मीन के स्तर पे लोक परंपराओं में जाएंगे, ordinary people of India and Pakistan, I imagine, people in the villages who sing this poetry, who deeply love and revere this poetry, don't just study it, वो तफावतें नहीं करते. It's like a folklorist C.P. Deval said once, and I thought it was a very marmic thing, कि लोक भेद नहीं करता, क्योंकि लोक समझ गया है कि वो सुपरी, वो पिरी, वो पिया बिना नाम का पिया है. That reality that we seek is beyond labels. So it goes without saying that when we ventured into Kutch, Gujarat, and we discovered Shah Abdul Latif's voice mingling along with Kabir's and Mira's and all these other poets, there was a great desire to know, to recognize, to learn, to share, and to discover. And in that spirit of finding resonance rather than difference, all our work is grounded in that, in some ways. So, I don't mean to here be stupidly idealistic or romantic about sarhadon ki koi zarurat nahi hai. We are all one kind of idealism. It is not that inspires this wisdom. एक नाम है, एक linguistic heritage है, एक particularity है, cultural particularity जो हम celebrate करते हैं, एक शरीर है, लेकिन इस शरीर में से एक छलांग भी आती है. और मेरे ख्याल से वो जो छलांग है, जो हमें नाम से बेनाम तक लेके जाती है, हद से अनहद तक लेके जाती है, ये जो मूवमेंट है, ये डांस है, यही सफ़र में सूफ़ी और कबीर हमें बार बार लाते हैं. तो इट इज़ नॉट टू डिनाई द प्लेस ऑफ सीमा या सरहद, but to show it its place. And its place is small in the experience of being truly human. In the place of tasting the capacity of being human. क्योंकि ज़्यादातर most of us don't even really taste that ना हम all our lives really are spent creating sarhads and territories and boundaries for our ego, individual or collective. And then, quite like dogs, sorry to offend people here, pissing on it, pissing on our territories. So we might do it in more sophisticated ways, but essentially that's what we are doing. तो मेरे ख्याल से इस बात से ऊपर उठना यही इंस्पिरेशन रही शाह लतीफ़ को समझने की, सुनने की, और इस सफ़र में जैसे जैसे हम और गहराई में उतरते गए गाँव में लोक कलाकारों के बीच, तो it was quite wondrous to see both the resonances between Kabir and Shah Latif and the utter uniqueness and beauty of Shah Latif, which was very fresh and new for a person like me. So, in fact, I'd like to play back a small audio recording. Can you give me the permission to
yes, why not?
Share that?
Yes, yes.
Why not? Yes, yes. Okay. I hope I'm able to share this.
You're sharing
I think
the
I need to be made co-host in order to share.
Some commonality between Bhitai and Kabir, or just you're presenting Kabir?
No, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to share a small video, audio recording first of a recording that someone sent me just 2-3 weeks ago, a person called Ahmad Hassan from Pakistan. And it is a recording of Shahjo Rag in some field area. It is an upload of Khana Badosh Baithak. And I will play that for you. You will have to make me co-host, otherwise I won't be able to play it. Requesting you to please make me co-host because I'm getting the message saying participant cannot screen share.
You have to share the screen, or you are going to play the voice?
I will play the voice, or okay, maybe I won't screen share. Uski quality thodi behtar rehti if I could have. Let me play it anyway. Can you hear?
Yes, please.
Yes. I will just give the listeners a clue. ये शाह के रागी गा रहे हैं what they call sur Hindi barwo. Those of you who are familiar with the Risalo know that there is a sur in Shah Latif called sur Sindhi barwo. Yahan they are singing a doha of Kabir. Kaga sabtan khayo, chun chun khayo mas. मोरे दो नैना मत खाइयो मोहे पिया मिलन की आस. और ये कबीर का दोहा बिल्कुल वाई के अंदाज में जैसे बेत और वाई गाया जाता है दंबूर के साथ. It has entered the orality of Shah Latif and it's even been given a name, Sur Hindi Barwo. Please listen.
Can you raise the volume, Shabnam? No, fine.
So I hope that was clear. I must say I was completely wonderstruck to hear this, this recording of a Kabir Doha spun into a bait with dhambur. And it is this kind of porosity that I think really moves me, to find that there are no compartments in a sense. And now I'll just share with you some resonances between the Kabir and the Shah Latif poetic tradition, where I find it quite magical to see that as we began our research, we would come across motifs, metaphors, ideas that were so resonant. जैसे कि हमने सुना था, नैना अंतर आवतूं नैन झांप तोहे लूं, ना मैं देखूं और को ना तोहे देखण दूं. ये हमने कबीर के हवाले से सुना था. और जब हम कच्छ में गए तो we came across this. अखियन में अची वे तवारे आऊं ढकियां, तोखे ना डिसी दे ने आऊं ना पसां बियो को. So it was quite magical to discover these consonances. Or many of you may have heard this bait. I will share the doha of Kabir and I will share the bait of Shah Sain. Kabir says, चाखो चाहे प्रेम रस, राखो चाहे मान, दो खड़ग एक मियान, देखा सुना नहीं कान. Kabir is saying, either taste the nectar of love or keep your pride and ego intact. Trying to fit two swords in one sheath, I've never heard of such a thing. अब शाह साईं क्या कहते हैं? की ना माइंदा मने खुदी का, बिन तन जाए एक. You will forgive me for my Sindhi. It's not the best, but I'm trying. So this we translated as, how will a single heart house both self and God? There isn't space for two swords in a single sheath. या कबीर एक और similar idea इस दोहे में बताते हैं. जब मैं था तब हरि नहीं, अब हरि हैं मैं नाही, प्रेम गली अति सांकरी, या में दो समाए नाही. You know, this, when I was, Hari wasn't. Now Hari is, I'm not. The path of love is slender. Two just cannot fit. Similarly, Kabir की बहुत ही एक famous poem है, चलती चाकी देख कर दिया कबीरा रोए, इन दो पाटन के बीच में साबुत बचा ना कोई. जिसका जवाब उन्हीं के शिष्य और बेटे कमाल ने दिया था, चाकी चाकी सब कहें खीली कहे न कोई, जो खीली से लाग रहा वाको बाल न बांका होए. So the grindstone turns and whirls, Kabir watches and weeps. Caught between two slabs, no one was left whole. Grinding slabs are all they see, no one notices the center pin. A few grains draw close to it and escape unbroken. और जब हम कराची में शूट कर रहे थे तो एक बहुत ही सुंदर सूफी गायक से हमारी भेंट हुई, शफी फ़कीर साहब. उन्होंने ये गा के सुनाया, जंढर पिहंडे जेडियूं थियो केड़ो कीस करन, के पीस जी पामाल थिया के घुमरण मंज गरन, साबुत सही रहन जे काबू रहया कीर से. So there was a lot of wonder in discovering all these resonant, echoing poetic images and motifs. And of course, one had heard poems of Kabir like, ये तो घर है प्रेम का, खाला का घर नहीं. शीश काट भोई धरे तब बैठे घर माही.
Okay, I'm here. No, I will talk in the morning. It's okay.
Ejaz Sahab, you'll have to mute yourself.
Sorry.
Thank you. So, encountering this doha of Kabir, ये तो घर है प्रेम का खाला का घर नाही, शीश काट भोई धरे तब बैठे घर माही. इसमें सर को काटने की बात है. And this is not a very extensive poetic image in Kabir. So then when we ventured into the poetry of Shah Latif, tab to it was amazing to discover this image of cutting off the head express itself in such rich diversity and detail, whether in Sur's Yaman, Kalyan, or Sur Surat in the story between Raidiach and Bijal, where Bijal is the minstrel and a guru figure who asks him to cut off his head. And also, when I was shooting Had an Had, Shafi Fakir Sahab sang this, Sar darre kadam yarish fida shud che baja shud. I bare gira bude vada shud che baja shud.
Sir dar kadam yar fida shud che baja shud. I bar gira bud ada shud che baja shud.
And yes, thank you. The idea of cutting off your head and placing it at the feet of the friend being just as well. The idea that this head is too heavy a burden. The head that we ordinary people guard and protect so much, for a Sufi it is the cheapest thing to give away. It's like Raidiach says to Bijal, is this head all you want? It's a really cheap deal. In one of his bets he says. So, to discover this entire poetry unfurl in Shah Latif about the idea of cutting off the head, to discover it even in the socio-political history of the Sindh region through the figure of Shah Inayat Shahid of Jhok, to discover the story of not just a Sufi speaking about philosophy and writing poetry and abstract symbolism, but to discover the figure of Shah Inayat Shahid, who was actually a farmer revolutionary who gathered, who created a commune which upset the local political establishment and religious establishment of that era. Which literally led to his head being cut off. And it's very moving to see how in the lore around Shah Inayat Shahid, the head travels all the way to the Sultanate in Delhi. It continues to speak a stream of verse, of which this Sar darre kadam yare fida shud che baja shud is one that has survived as an iconic memory in memory of Shah Inayat Shahid. But that poetry is called Besar Nama. It is the ballad of the headless. So for me, this journey of discovering all this history, because it's almost easier to speak in the poetic and the abstract, but to see it come together and in the lived socio-political, where someone's head was really cut off, and to see the links between that and Sur Karayal, which is, I think, a connection that not many have made, which was very exciting for me to discover and make those links, listening to folklore on this side of the border as well, which have similar images coming from the historical event of Shah Inayat Shahid. तो ये बहुत मैजिकल एक दौर चला कबीर के इस शीश काट भोई धरे वाली एक पोएम से लेके to discover this entire poetics through Shah Sai and through the history of Sufism in Sindh. And I'll speak a little bit about the idea of death or मौत की जो कैफियत है, फना की कैफियत जो सूफी की होती है, वो that is so resonant with Kabir again. मेरे ख्याल से in the keynote address you were very kind to quote this one poem of ours from Shah Sai, crashing, crumbling, dissolving, disappearing, the whole world scatters in a moment. Your dear one's feet stomp the earth over your head. In all moments we carry a spade and a string to dig and measure out our graves. Now, to say that this is extremely resonant with the spirit of Kabir is an understatement. क्योंकि कबीर की कैफियत में मौत हर दम आपकी नज़रों के सामने खड़ी है. That is what makes you a bhakta. That is what makes you a Sufi. तो Kabir will say, कबीर नौबत आपनी दिन 10 लेई बजाए, ये शहर ये गलियां देखे ही छूट जाए. The drum rolls of the self beat for just 10 days. It will vanish in a flash, this city, its alleys and ways. रोवनहार भी मुए यानी मर गए, मुए जलावनहार, हाय हाय करते ते मुए, कांसों करो पुकार. Dead the man who lit the pyre, dead those who saw the body burn, dead the mourners, dead the sobbers. Now to whom will you turn? Ved mua, rogi mua, mua sakal sansar, kabira na mua, jaake ram adhar. Saviors die, sufferers die, everyone's drowning and dying. Only Kabir stays alive. Ram threw him a lifeline. Anyway, so I just wanted to say that these consonances between two great poetic voices was a very exciting thing to discover in our research into the oral traditions of Shah Latif. But Shah Latif, of course, is utterly, gloriously distinct and unique from Kabir in that he revels in the topography of nature and, in a sense, the real land of Sindh that he traversed and discovered and knew so intimately. To discover that quality of poetry in a Sufi's voice where he entangles you emotionally with the wind, with the clouds, with the mountains, with the earth, with the sun, with the moon. He quibbles with them, he quarrels with them, he makes them friends and allies. And they are always resonant of some internal truth. The mountain that Sassi battles is her internal roadblock at some level too. And when she crosses that internal hurdle, the mountain becomes a friend. The mountain sits and weeps with her. So it's so moving. These things you don't discover in Kabir. शाह साईं के कलाम में तो ड्रामा है, किरदार हैं, कहानियाँ हैं, legends हैं, plot है, narrative है. This is completely, it was enthralling to discover all these stories and actually to discover shades of these characters in one's own psyche, in one's own psycho-spiritual universe, and to discover those moments where you feel like a Sassi or you feel like Marui, trapped in a fortress that is your own mind, held hostage by Umar, who is your own nafs, your own small ego. To discover that moment when you feel like Sassi, when you have the courage of transgression, where you take the leap, where you plunge, to discover Sasi, where you taste the power, the dignity of sorrow, the dignity, the path of sorrow. Acho suran variyu, kariyu sur pachar, kini ghana, kini thorda, nae koi suran kandhar, muke dina je datar, mu jholi pae jhaliyan. So this is very, very, very new, was very new, to discover this quality of emotional, spiritual textures. You don't find this in Kabir. तो बहुत मज़ा भी आया, बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिला in this journey. Despite our limitations of not understanding Sindhi, not being able to read it, not being very well versed in the Sufi tradition, it was a journey and a path of discovery, and we, I think, have only just put our toes in the water, in the waters of Shah Sai. So it is very gratifying and humbling to have this book published in your land. So thank you again.
Thank you, Shabnam ji. I have a few more questions, but before, I had an idea when we were talking about Kabir. Akyun me thi vehe taun ware dhakyan tokhe disse na deha un pasanki biyo, and the exact translation of the Kabir's Doha. And when we draw analogies of Bhitai with Persian tradition as well, and I see there are some 40 bats, 40 or 41 bats of Shah Bhitai, which are exact translation of Maulana Rumi's verses, not idea, word to word and line by line translation. So perhaps I wonder that in previous times, there was no idea of or narrow-mindedness to rate it as a plagiarism, so that in Sufi tradition, you can borrow the idea and present in your own language. I would ask a different question now about legacy of Latif in your part of Kutch. As you have said, आपने कहा है अपनी किताब में भी, जब बरे सगीर की तक़सीम हुई, तो सिर्फ it was not a partition, geographical partition, but भिटाई का जो अपना culture था या cultural legacy थी, उसका भी partition था. उसके हवाले से मैं पूछना चाहूँगी, आप ये बताएं कि what is the legacy of your side of border on the one hand? This is one question, and I also relate this question to what you said about Kabir, that you have been with Kabir Panthis and you made faqirs of Bhitai as well. Now, what are the similarities and what are the differences, Kabir Panthis and Bhitai faqirs, and how you see them in your own idea of, especially when we talk about those faqirs who are in that part of the land, they never visited shrine, they don't meet the people. Whatever the exegesis are being written on Bhitai, they are not aware of it. But still, what are the binding forces that make them sustain or nurture that love and passion for Bhitai over there? So there are a few questions together. I'm asking, yeah.
Thank you, Sahar ji. Aapki आवाज़ थोड़ी कट के आ रही है, but I think I got the drift of your question. I think the legacy of Shah Latif on this side of the border is not a very thriving or a robust one. In fact, the singers of the white tradition, which is mostly members of the Jath herding pastoral communities in Kutch and Rajasthan, they sing Shah Sai quite like the faqirs of Bhitshah Dargah. They sing on a dhambur, the bets and wives of Shah Latif. Simultaneously, there are many Hindu Dalit folk singers of Kabir and other voices and other mystic poets who also sing Shah Sai in the tradition inspired by Mohan Bhagat and Kanwar Ram, which is where they sing on the tambura, the kafis of Shah. So it is a tradition that I would say is struggling to, it's surviving, but it's not thriving. I think that's the difference. It is surviving in a context where there are very few Sindhi speakers, people who understand this Sindhi poetry. So a lot of the poetry which non-Sindhi folk singers will sing of Shah Latif, the words get mixed up, the meanings get confused, they're not very alert to the language. तो वो definitely है, लेकिन एक भाव जो है, एक feeling वो बरकरार है, और एक reverence भी बरकरार है, और एक सिक, एक प्यास बिल्कुल ही बरकरार है. But I say this with some semblance of sadness, or not sadness, but just worry in a sense, because I don't think this art form of Bai singing on this side of the border is getting enough nourishment. And maybe digital exchanges will help bridge that, where listening and having mutual exchanges across the border between the wife singers and the fakirs of Shah Latif on this side, and communication and exchanges might enrich that. Otherwise, it's a tradition that's surviving but not thriving. Yeah, that's all I'll say.
Okay. So I would like to talk about oral tradition of Bhitai's poetry. Last time when we had our program together in the Sindh Literature Festival, we discussed about, you had read one Vai to me.
Which I was planning to read again, so you please give me the honor of reading it, because that's the only sample I managed to gather.
I'd be happy if you recite that, Shabnam ji. But I have,
yes,
you know what I did? I tried to search that Vai all over the internet and from people. I sent almost every friend of mine who knew about Bhitai. And I got different versions. And I got different versions of that Vai, and in some versions certain lines were mentioned and some not. So when you recite it fully, the one that you sent me and the one that I have, it's a bit slightly different, because mine has a few more lines added. So I'd be happy if you recite it and then I recite afterwards.
Thank you, Sahar ji. So basically your question was about the beauty of an oral tradition of a mystic poet. You know, I feel a mystic, a Sufi or a mystic who's truly worth his salt leaves behind a growing republic of poetry. It doesn't stay frozen in one text as the authentic original. It grows because people make it their own. They love it, they add to it, and unka oeuvre बढ़ता चला जाता है. तो हमने इस किताब में भी उस oral tradition में से कई ऐसी poems यहाँ include की जो हमें रिसाले में नहीं मिली. And here I would really like to pay my acknowledgement and tribute to the late Abdullah Hussain Turk, Haji Sahab as he was called, to whom this book is also dedicated, because I don't think without him literally holding our hands and walking us into this universe of Shah Sai, we would have discovered Bhitai in the way we did. Abdullah Hussain Turk ji was an incredible walking, talking, breathing individual, जिनकी हर सांस में Shah Sai थे, actually. I would also pay tribute to Umar Haji Suleiman Sahab, who is another Gyani of Shah Sai, from whom we've learnt a lot. The singers Mitha Khan and Sumar Jat. There are many younger seekers as well, Anwar Luhar, Mazharuddin, from whom we have heard these oral poems of Shah Sai. And this particular one we heard from Abdul Hussain Turk. It is a moment where Sassi is saying, I will conquer and I will find my Punu no matter what. So she says here, Karra dungar kah ghani, ma chotiye te chadan diyas. Munji bol baroch se, aau pere pand kandiyas. Pere pand chadiyo, ta aau gode ghisran diyas. Gode ghisran chadiyo, ta aau chel bar choran diyas. Chel pa chorn chadiyo, ta sine se soran diyas. Sine pa son chadiyo, to ठूठे ठड़कन दियास ठूठे ठड़कन छड़ियो त हथन से हलीन दियास हथे हलन छड़ियो तब अखियन से इंडियास मिरु थई मिरुअन में सब जंगल जागीन दियास पक्षी थई पक्षियन में सब सर सोधीन दियास माड़ू थई माड़ुअन में सब गोठ गोलीन दियास इन पर अब्दुल लतीफ चे आऊं पुनो देवेंदियास पो मिलई तो मिलियास न तक गोरई जान जतन हो.
Very beautiful.
In fact, we are in the process of editing a series of short films which we call the Lockdown Film Series, Ajab Mulaqatein, which are interviews and conversations we've had with seekers, lovers of Shah Latif, Kabir, Mirabai, Ghulam Farid, when we were all locked down, essentially, sitting at home. So these are all Zoom conversations, magical moments of digital intimacy, if you will, where distances got bridged through Zoom. And so we've started editing and putting out some of these films as part of a series called Ajab Mulaqatein. And right now we're editing a film on Sassi, where we'll edit in this poem that I heard from Abdullah Hussain Bhai, and you'll see it in this. And all these films are part of our digital archive, Ajab Sheher.
Okay. Shabnam ji, I have a last question to ask from you. Apart from your work in filmmaking, archiving, and writing, you have also begun to sing yourself on these journeys of yours. Would you like to sing something for us today, either from Kabir or Bhitai? It's up to you.
I can, yes. I can do something small. My repertoire of Shah Sai is very limited, but I will share a poem by Shah Sai in Sur Sohini. And here again, I see the wonder of Kabir and Shah Sai gently jostling shoulders. So this was a doha of Kabir that I had heard. जिन खो जाता पाया गहरे पानी पेट मैं बौरी डूबन डरी रही किनारे बैठ. Kabir is saying, the one who really searched, who gave it her all, she found. Gehre pani pet, she plunged into the deep waters. And then he says ruefully, wistfully about himself, Main bori duban dari. Me, I, stupid girl, मैं तो डूबने से डरती रही किनारे बैठ. So this image, as you know, is the center of this amazing narrative of Sohini Mihar. So I'll sing a small kafi that I have heard and heard from a beautiful singer called Muralala Marwada ji in Kutch. Sahar kan kini sango sahjo ke ghorayasi kayo ghidan sahar sandhotin ere re 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 gha ghae ghidan je Shah Latif chain हाँ भेट जानी गो था Latif chain मुन्ही के छाल मिला हाय रीला मुन्ही के छाल मिला
Very beautiful. Shabnam, आपने तो यहाँ पे सबको झुमा दिया. Thank you very much. I once again congratulate you and Vipul Rikhi for publishing this wonderful book. And I give now mic to Hamida Hun Sahab to move the program further. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shabnam. Khuda khush rakhe. We hope one day, as I told you earlier, and you expressed your doubts, but hope one day you will sing at the Bhitai shrine with the fakirs. That's all one can say. And thank you. Thank you so much.
आपके मुंह में घी शक्कर.
Badi mehrbani. Thank you.